Well, hey, wouldn't you know it? There are new Metroid rumors out there, so let's talk about them. So, wouldn't you know it? Here in the waning days of YouTube, before Kappa comes to destroy everything about YouTube and everything about gaming YouTubers, we have a month to go before this whole thing happens. And these rumors sneak in, giving me potentially the last opportunity I have before January 1st, 2020 to talk about Metroid, which is really actually pretty exciting. I'm really glad for it. And so, joking and theorizing about Kappa aside, what am I talking about? Well, there was a Twitter account that's been known for posting all sorts of weird, wacky, and wild things and rumors and leaks and stuff over the years that discussed two new potential Metroid games that Nintendo's planning to release next year. The reputation isn't the best for this Twitter account, but it's a story, it's a thing that happened, it's got people talking about, and as I always like to remind you guys, I am here to cover Metroid. It's what I do. Everyone comes to me for Metroid stuff. I know that you guys want to hear me talk about it. People were tweeting me about it. It's an interesting concept, and it does relate to some things about Metroid's possible future that I've talked about, especially in lieu of Metroid Prime 4's delay and restart, and the game's a big mystery, and it's probably 2 or 3 years off. And so here comes this conversation, and it's crazy. So we are, of course, referencing a tweet from Leaky Pandy, at Leaky Pandy on Twitter. Again, an account that has not gotten a lot of things right, so we're putting that out there before we talk about this rumor. And here is the tweet that was put out by Leaky Pandy earlier today. Nintendo is planning 2 new Metroid titles that will release in the next 2 fiscal years respectively. One is a re-release of Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. The second one is a Super Metroid remake that mimics Samus Returns in style and scope. So, pretty interesting stuff. Pretty cool sounding stuff. There is no doubt that that sounds great. It definitely sounds like something every Metroid fan and every Nintendo fan would want. It's like the wet dream of Metroid and Nintendo fans. The Metroid Prime Trilogy, which we've all been waiting for and talking about for a long time. Some of us since the Switch pretty much launched. And then, why not remake Super Metroid the exact same way they did Metroid 2 when they released Samus Returns on the 3DS? Everyone would love that, right? So, here's this rumor. And so, I probably am sounding a little bit more cynical than I actually mean to be fair, so I probably should tone it down. But I do have to say, my overall opinion and feeling and thinking about this right here, how do I feel about it? Do I believe it? Do I not? Well, it's tricky and it's complicated, okay? The reason it's kind of tricky and complicated is because I tend to think that the idea of Nintendo releasing the Prime Trilogy or doing some sort of remake or remaster of Super Metroid isn't crazy. I've discussed many times over the course of this past year since the delay of Metroid Prime 4 that I do suspect Nintendo is working on some sort of other Metroid release to come out on the Switch between now and the eventual release of Prime 4, and I've thrown out the idea, obviously the Prime Trilogy, we've been talking about it forever, but a remake or remaster of Super Metroid, of Metroid Fusion, of Metroid Other M, I've discussed those, or obviously a new game, a new 2D game, something like that. So what I'm trying to get at here is that these releases really kind of could be real, you guys. I tend to think that it's not crazy that Nintendo might be planning on doing one or both of these games. However, do I think that this is being stated from this Twitter account, on this tweet, as fact from somebody who knows the behind-the-scenes fact about the development of these games? That's where it becomes a little bit questionable. And as I even kind of hinted at Twitter, this is the kind of thing that to me, because I've been talking about it for months, you guys have heard me say it, kind of seems so obvious that it's the sort of thing that somebody could just completely guess out of thin air just because it makes sense and because they know it's going to get people talking and just throw it out there to try to get the conversation going and feel like they're the person that kind of broke the story. And so I obviously don't know this Leaky Pandy person, and so they may be genuine, they may be not. I just know that some things that I've discussed and that I've seen happen from them over the last couple years or whatever, a lot of it has not come true. And so, we can only take this tweet from this account as far as we can throw it. And so I think that's kind of my feeling here. And I hope that in a lot of ways, some of you guys who are like me and frothing at the mouth for new Metroid, especially new Metroid on the Nintendo Switch, can kind of see that this is not an entirely negative or cynical stance I'm trying to state here. I think there are positives to take away from this. My gut feeling as a diehard Metroid and Nintendo Super fan is that these releases and these ideas are not crazy, and I just think that, yes, in 2020, I believe that there is some sort of secret, unreleased, unannounced, unconfirmed Metroid game that Nintendo will be releasing something like that next year. And I've said it before, it could be the Prime Trilogy, although I am not believing in that anymore until Nintendo proves me wrong. You've heard me say that. I've written it off because I'm just sick of the emotions we've all gone through with the Prime Trilogy. But whatever, could be the Prime Trilogy, could be a Super Metroid remake, just like this person is saying. I, however, have long preferred the idea of just a brand new Metroid game. I mean, Super Metroid, one of the greatest games of all time, my third favorite Metroid game of all time, an absolute perfect 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And so yes, remaking it would be great. I would welcome it. I would love to see what they would do with it, with the art style, with the visuals. What would they add or change or tweak? I think it could be absolutely amazing. But if they announced a Metroid 5, a brand new game using an art style that we haven't seen before, maybe like a super fancy melding of like 16-bit and 32-bit like pixel art graphics, something like that, and it's a sequel to Metroid Fusion and Super Metroid and Other M, like that whole trilogy, that to me becomes more exciting than remaking even the classic Super Metroid. I do have to say that one of the tricky things to me when I think about the Super Metroid remake and this tweet calling it out as something that Nintendo is planning over the next 2 years is that even though I don't think it's crazy for Nintendo to make or release that in the next year or two, I do have to say that it feels and sounds like such a too good to be true kind of thing. It's one of those things like how many fake leaks and hoaxes that we've seen over the past, let's even just go back 5 years. In the past 5 years, how many of them have we seen that are so clearly playing on the emotions of the audience it's catering to and are so desperately trying to just be the thing that is the perfect wish that everyone could ever want, you know, and just exactly, people yelled for Rayman and Smash Forever, so somebody faked it. People went nuts over the Nintendo NX controller patents, and so somebody faked it, you know. People were dying for information about the online for the Nintendo Switch, and they wanted all these perfect, great things, and then somebody faked it. It's like, and so people dying for more Metroid, and so what does this tweet say? Oh, the Prime Trilogy HD everyone's been talking about? Sure, that's real. Oh, everyone wants a remake of Super Metroid just because they did Samus Returns and that turned out well? Well, yeah, they're making that too because everyone's going to believe it because people would want these things so badly, they might not criticize or scrutinize the legitimacy of the tweet that hard, you know, for that exact reason. And as the Metroid fan that wants Metroid like more than anybody, I almost feel more obligated to scrutinize it more thoroughly. So I know that this is getting complicated and off the rails in this whole thing, but I just feel like part of me says these games make sense and I would believe that they're coming soon. The other part of me says it's too good to be true and it's too easy to just state this perfect, beautiful thing that everyone wants and put it out there as if you're the person that knows all of the inside info. And so just from the perspective of it being a rumor and if it's true or not based on the one tweet, it's hard for me to believe it from that perspective. But I don't know, man. I've already said this. You guys have heard me for months when I've theorized about Metroid in lieu of Metroid Prime 4. Yeah, I think that these games are the kinds of things I could see Nintendo doing. Remake a classic game, release a Prime Trilogy in HD, release a brand new 2D Metroid game. Like, yeah, I think at least one of those things will happen next year, and if not next year, at bare minimum 2021. A lot of people on Twitter responding to this tweet were talking about, what about Metroid Prime 4? Where is that? Are we waiting forever for this? How can you not talk about Metroid Prime 4? And it's surprising to me how many people A, seem to not know about the delay and the restart, and B, would even think that that game is on the horizon. Like, you guys, Metroid Prime 4 is far off. They just restarted development on that game 11 months ago, you guys. Maybe 12 months ago. Maybe a year ago. Unless they've been lying to us, and I don't think that they have been. I don't think Nintendo's been lying. I think that when they told us about the delay and the restart is in the window of time of when it actually happened. I don't think Nintendo has been lying to us about it for the 2 years beforehand. That would be so lame of Nintendo to do. and to kind of try to trick us. Especially because we didn't see it, the Prime Trilogy released at the Game Awards last year. That's the whole big thing is last year was a big conversation. There were so many rumors. There was behind the scenes chatter. I was very, involved in conversations with the behind the scenes chatter. I was involved in podcasts where it was brought up as something that everyone can expect. And I was privy to a lot of that stuff. And it was very exciting. And most of the world got excited for it. And it didn't happen. But of course, only a month later, we heard about the delay of Prime 4, so then the discussion was Nintendo initially planning on revealing the Prime Trilogy at the Game Awards, but then when they made the decision about Prime 4, they realized they needed to delay it and push it back. And so there certainly could be truth to that. I don't know how much I believe it, but it's not impossible, so I'm open to that having been true. But either way, regardless of any of that, it still means that Nintendo restarted Prime 4 about 11 months ago. And I'm sure that a Prime 4, whether it's coming out on the Switch or, per my theory, coming out on the next console, Nintendo is taking their time. They've shown they won't make the mistake and release a bad game. They're putting the effort in. They're not going to force this thing out quickly. If this thing takes even 5 years, Nintendo will wait the 5 years. They will not mess up Metroid Prime 4, especially coming off of controversial releases, Other M, and Federation Force. I've mentioned that before, too. And so everyone who was like, Prime Trilogy and Super Metroid, what about Metroid Prime 4? It's like, you guys, you gotta cool your jets, man. You gotta cool your jump boots. You gotta step back and realize Prime 4 is a ways away. So let's wait and see what Nintendo has in store for Metroid next year or the year after. I don't know if we should believe these tweets, but I do think that we will hear from Metroid in some fashion next year in 2020. So I hope that fills the Metroid fans out there with some positivity and some optimism about what could be happening. And for now, this leaky pandy tweet, inside info, complete hoax and lie, who even knows? So let's not focus too much on that. And let's just wait and see if we get something from Metroid in 2020. So that's the discussion. Those are the Metroid rumors. 2 Metroid games over the next 2 years. Will the Prime Trilogy finally emerge from the abyss and become a real thing that we actually have on the Nintendo Switch? Will it be HD or will it not be? Who even knows, man? But I'm just going to stick to my guns and remind you guys, I think we're going to hear from Metroid next year. Not Prime 4, but in some other fashion, Metroid's coming. Mark my words. And we'll just have to see what happens. So what do you think? What do you think of the tweet and the rumor? Do you believe it? Do you not? Do you trust it? Is it a lie? Do you want it? Do you not want it? What do you think? Whatever you feel, talk about it below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.